Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I'm going to share with you my ideas for one new card for every splinter. These are Domineers. This is part of the People's Guild promotion contest to drive our community to think of new abilities, new cards, new stats. So one new card for each element. If that sounds interesting, stick around and stay tuned, and definitely check out the People's Guild post, which is linked in the description, because you're going to want to participate and have a chance to earn these amazing rewards as well. People's Guild in their recent post from yesterday talking about a Dominion challenge, or a challenge to create new Dominion cards. These will kind of be a replacement for Guild cards. If you don't follow People's Guild on Hive, you should. And I mean, you probably already, you guys do. But, you know, people need to know, man. It's crazy how few people do. I think even if it's, we could check their following on YouTube. It's not big enough. I mean, the number of people, the value that they bring to the community and the conversation that they have is substantial. This is really cool. This is exciting. It's not just, the cool thing about their channel too is it's not just what's going on with the game. It's actually ideas, proactive ideas around how we can drive creative new victories for Splinterlands. And this is part of that. This idea sounds really cool, and I'm excited to chat on it today. That's one thing that I want to get into. Actually, we'll probably start there because I've just started reading it and it looks really awesome, especially since it just came out yesterday and maybe not everybody heard about it. But it's going to be a 3-part series through which they want to drive community engagement around card design. First, focusing on new abilities over the next 10 days. And then beyond that, there'll be parts 2 and 3 of this one challenge. So this is all focused on generating new cards that will replace the Gladiators in the Guild Brawl. It says that we would like to introduce the Dominion card set, featuring a brand new class of card known as the Domineers. And hopefully we'll get 7 new abilities across new splinters. And they should be team-wide benefits, not specific, sort of individualistic, like the Bloodlust feature with the Gladius cards. The Bloodlust, obviously, cards like Control, they get that double strike, and then they Bloodlust get so out of control, so powerful, that one card becomes powerful. But team-wide benefits is a totally different approach. It's not focused on a sort of one big performer, but rather generalized improvement to the team. Talk about 1 or 2 round bonuses, meaning like the bonus doesn't last for the entire engagement or the game. Maybe it repeats if there's certain criteria that are met, but it's not permanent. The Bloodlust is permanent. This would last for a period of time, unless re-engaged. Thematic roots, which I like when we talk about water, you know, what is the imagery and metaphor, or you know, mystique even of what the water element looks like in Splinterlands already, and maybe generally from a generalized fantasy lore perspective. What does that mean from like synergistic or approach to card design? Like, okay, water. This is just off the top of my head. But we're talking water, we're thinking sea creatures. Okay, sea creatures, you know, we've seen a lot of that already. Like the Kraken is one of the top monsters, massive beast, and it's this in real life or in real mythology. It's like this image that's referred to biblically of this sea creature that God created, and that man doesn't even understand or know where it is, or has never seen it, doesn't understand its creation. There's this mystique around it, and it's water specific, and it's this massive creature. And so then that's one piece of how you could start to imagine the element impacting your card design. That's more the visual, but then what about abilities? It's in the water. Maybe it's slippery. What would slippery, the ability slippery, mean for Splinterlands the game? Maybe it's like dodge, like, you know, against, for instance, non-water bait, like flight. If you're not a flyer, you have a 25% chance to miss a flying unit. What about slippery? You're not a water unit, you have a 25% chance to miss a water unit. That's just totally off the top of my head right now. You can see how a thematic direction on card design and ability design would be really creative and fun. And so this is a cool contest, and they give away prizes. I actually don't know anything about the prizes, but I know they give away prizes. There's a part where it says that these will replace the Gladiator, which is cool and exciting, right? It would be a totally different look and way of engaging. So just to pull back to the conversation around Domineers and the Dominion Challenge, I really like this idea, and I love that it's community driven. I love that's what the People's Guild is really focused on in terms of driving community interest, because if we're excited about different things and passionate, well, we can share that passion. And there's this like cumulative knowledge that comes from decentralization that's possible to draw upon to get the best ideas, right? If we had one person crafting every idea, you're going to see things that get missed. But if you have a multitude of voices, you can, of course, have too many voices, but a multitude of voices with a sort of approach to allowing the best to rise, for instance, with SPS votes that drive certain selected or preferred voices to the top, is this natural process where decentralization can lead to excellent success. So I love it. And they give some cool examples that I wanted to feature. Water drown. That's like the drown ability. Slow the opponent's entire team by 1 speed for 1 round after the Domineer kills an enemy. They talk about it in this post, how the ability should be sort of thematically appropriate. Water, drown slows down. Okay. I think actually, interestingly, my slippery idea might be better, but is it maybe it happens on the first round. Your cards are slippery while they're wet, but then in the second round they're dry and they lose that slipperiness, as an example. Earth Barkskin. After a kill, the entire team gains 1 armor for 2 rounds, representing the sturdy resilience of nature. Interesting. From off the top of my head, can I think of an Earth one? Earth. Roots. Roots to me has this imagery of like sturdy, or the roots of a tree are bigger than you imagine. People underestimate how deep a root system can be. And so what if roots is like, you actually have, if the trunk dies on a tree, the roots will die. But the trunk can take serious damage and the roots still bring back to life. And so what if roots was like, you actually have, for 1 turn, you aren't dead after you're dead. For 1 turn. You get 1 more strike, or you have 1 chance at a triage restoration that brings you out of that phase and back into play. But you will die after that turn that you've lost all your hearts. So hearts go to 0, you're dead, but your roots are alive, and you're allowed to stick around for 1 more strike, 1 more turn, 1 more moment. Stuns would prevent you from swinging, or self-healing, but self-heals, triages, cleanses, tank heals that land on you would bring you out of that phase and back into life. That's a resiliency. That's a reference to the imagery of tree and root, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm liking where my head is going on this, and I'm definitely gonna post this later. Let's try and do Fire and Dragon, and we'll just wrap by moving on, because I've pretty much covered the contest. Fire. They say combustion. Upon an enemy kill, all allied monsters receive +1 attack for 1 round, symbolizing the fiery rage of the element. Okay. When I think fire, I think the first word that comes to mind is Scorched Earth. It's like the opposite nature. Nature is this balance and beauty and life. Fire is like death and destruction. And in the same way that can be really toward the enemy, it can be toward the self. And you could imagine the fiery destruction or Scorched Earth ability being something where all monsters, and this is something I'm getting now from Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, which you guys know I love. There's a card, there's an event card, which is almost like a magic spell you can play, where you do 2 damage to every opponent that's on the table, but then you also have to do 1 damage to all of your own monsters. And so Scorched Earth is maybe it's a selectable spell that you can drop. Like you get 1 time you can drop it in the game. Or maybe it's a selectable spell this might make more sense if it had a percentage chance to occur. Like, as long as your monster is alive that has this ability, at the end of the round, there's a 10% chance to proc it. And then at the end of round 2, there's a 20% chance to proc it. Maybe. That might be a little overkill. I could imagine it might be better to say 1 damage for everyone. Scorched Earth. And then you might say, well, why would I want to suffer 1 damage on every one of my monsters in exchange for 1 against every one of my opponents? Remember, you could craft, knowing that you would be dropping that ability, you could craft your team in such a way where 1 hit point is not going to be critical. But your opponent, not knowing that you're going to drop that ability, might use some 1 or 2 or 3 hit point monsters that are really susceptible. And so it's like an intentional redemption that maybe you use once or twice or 3 times in a long game, and it's not necessarily controlled by you. It's more that percentage-based drop opportunity or proc opportunity. Yeah, that's my idea. Scorched Earth. And finally, Dragon. I know there's other splinters, but let's just finish on dragons. Actually, let me think. I did Watered, Earth, Fire. I want to do Death. They did Dragon. I'm gonna do Death. That's my new favorite splinter, I think, by the way, with Lorcus and with Night Stalker and with a few others too. Okay, so Death, Grave. Ooh, Grave, Empty Grave. I'm thinking Resurrect though. It's like almost like a Resurrect imagery is coming to my mind, but there is already Resurrect. Okay, here's something. Pulling on my D2, my Diablo 2 history, enjoyment, years of playing that game. The Necromancer in that game has this corpse explosion. Your monster, I think if you had a corpse explosion that's different than a redemption, it would work like this. The corpse exploding monster damages the adjacent monster. No, because you're a Death Splinter and they're all like, they're within that realm of darkness, afterlife kind of thing. Your neighbor, if your first monster dies with corpse explosion or whatever that ability ends up being called, the first monster on the opponent team takes physical damage. It's going to hit armor first, or hit points second, but it's area effect. And so to balance that idea and to make it different than just a redemption, it's only the area effect. It's only that first monster that killed you. The one that killed you. So if an opportunity monster kills you, a sneak monster kills you, the first position monster kills you, they're the one that's going to endure that corpse explosion. Simultaneously, any monster adjacent to any of your friendly monsters adjacent to your now deceased domineering monster will reap an area effect heal. It's like this toxic gas, but they are death, they are evil, they are darkness, and they actually enjoy that I don't know, haze or gas or whatever, that fume that is emitted on the explosion. That's fun. I like that. And you guys probably have great ideas too. If you have any, I'd love to see them. Okay, guys, so I'm back and I've got my 3 last suggestions for the Domineers. I didn't do Light, I didn't do Dragon, and I didn't do Neutral. So here are my ideas, and I'm slapping this in with the clip that I produced with my members. Thank you to the members for helping create this content. You're amazing. If you want to support the channel, check it out, guys, the members app. Okay, so Life. The idea behind Life in my mind is that I'm thinking angelic. I'm thinking imagery from heaven. I'm thinking the phrase hedge of protection came to mind. And this, within Christian terms, means like we pray for one another, and there's like we understand that God hears those prayers. And the scripture actually says that like He expects us to go boldly before the throne room of grace. Theologically, that means that he is sitting on a throne of power and grace, meaning undeserved favor. You're welcome to go in there. You ask anything you want. And so this idea of prayer or hedge of protection is that one character, the Domineer, prays this blessing over his team. And so the adjacent units, the ones that are closest to him, the ones that he is praying for or delivering this hedge of protection over, have a divine shield. You could do a different ability in there. It wouldn't have to be Divine Shield, but it's so angelic in nature. It's so appropriate from the theme and from the lore. And then I think it's distinct enough in this application because it's being delivered by your positioning of the Domineer. It's the closest units to, whether that's, if you put the Domineer in the first spot, your second spot monster gets a Divine Shield. If you put it in the second spot, your first and third get a Divine Shield. Of course, that last one hit. I think it's an interesting application, and I think it's lore appropriate and thematically, logical within the context of Life. So that's my first. My second is Dragon. And this I really like because it makes me think about dragon lore generally, and makes me think about Hobbit. I call it golden trinkets. Golden trinkets is an idea that it would be the first ever tactics that would spawn from a monster. And so, we've seen tactics apply from your summoner, and your summoner can drop tactic buffs onto your monsters or nerfs onto your opponents. Why can't your monster do that? In some smaller way, right? And then this would look like a damage output range buff, a damage output increase or hit point increase. Second one is what I'm calling golden trinkets. And it's playing on dragon lore imagery. You know, they're fond of collecting treasures. And we see it in The Hobbit where, I'm forgetting his name right now and I'm such a huge fan. Smaug has this amazing treasure trove. And you also see it in actually another amazing book that I love, Chronicles of Narnia. The one where they go on a journey. I forget where it is. Like they sail somewhere to go see Aslan's country. Regardless, dragons like treasure. And within the treasure, there are trinkets that are powerful and unique and applicable. And so your monster is a dragon, and it's able to drop trinkets to neighboring monsters, one of your allies or one of your opponents for that matter, if that made sense. And they would have to be nerfed in the sense of like they can't be as powerful as some of the tactics summoners. That would be too crazy. But it could be a minimal stat buff, like a +1 damage or a +1 HP, or it could be like ability specific. And then I started thinking about Lord of the Rings, where Bilbo went into Smaug's cave and was trying to seek out the Arkenstone, if you guys don't know, and he ended up finding all these amazing treasures. So they found the Arkenstone, and that gives a willpower buff in this game, Lord of the Rings living card game. Willpower, it could be instead, it's not like a damage or a resistance. It would be some kind of aura, maybe a defensive aura. This would be some kind of aura or some sort of like defensive component, some sort of defensive buff. And one thing I thought was dragons have dragon scale. Dragon scale is resistant to fire. It's also resistant to damage. So again, a divine shield could potentially work, but let's lean away from that and go into like fire resistance, because we know now we have debilitations, and some of the debilitations come from monsters that are within the fire splinter, like that new Soulbound reward card, Kazi Conjurer, and it has this ability of incendiary or debilitation, applying a 33% chance to damage itself and neighboring monsters by 2 damage per round. That's really substantial. And so what if you could have a dragon monster that's equipped with dragon scales, one of these golden trinkets that are from the treasure troves of the dragon, your Domineer monster, and you can equip either the dragon itself has that skill, or it has a trinket that it can apply to a monster that might be adjacent to a Kazi Conjurer, or for that matter, any future fire damage that might come from Splinterlands or other future cards, not necessarily just debilitation, any fire damage. So you can imagine auras or resistances. You can imagine minor stat buffs like damage output or range or magic or one more hit point. And yeah, just to, I guess, drive that visually home, Bilbo found this amazing sword with this crazy heritage, and it did increased physical damage. It did an astonishing amount of physical damage in the stories and in the game. The mithril coat protects in a significant way. The Arkenstone gives greater sort of willpower, ability to think through things. And so however you imagine that within the game of Splinterlands, it would be these minor buffs that you could apply to neighboring monsters that are on your team or maybe on the opponent, if that makes sense. And that leaves us with neutral. And as we look at neutral, I thought of the idea of 2 things. Neutral, jack of all trades. They're not as good as other splinters. Like, neutral monsters are often lower in damage output, lower in base stats for a mana cost. You pay more mana for less ability, and yet they have that flexibility of being neutral. They fit in more circumstances. So I thought jack of all trades, master of none. I also thought copycat, because I thought of Lux Vega and how Lux Vega is so similar to Kelly Frendel. Kelly Frendel, +1/+1, and with Lux all you do is get 1 more heart. And so the neutral is like a copycat. So those 2 phrases played in my mind as I designed what I thought was cool, which is this copycat ability or copycat monster, Domineer. And it would have very low stats. Base, like maybe it does 1 damage and has, 2 hit points as its core self. But as a copycat, it can literally copy the stats of an opponent or an ally but it has to stay neutral specific. So it can only copy neutral. It's like a duplicate, but it's an inferior duplicate. it has it would have a reasonable mana cost, like a 6 or an 8 or something, but then it could copy 10 or 12 or 18 or 20, any mana cost monster that it sees. But it has to see them, and they have to be neutral, and the damage or the stats that you're going to claim will be lower. They'll be 75% of the total stats that the original will hold. And so you're going to be a reduced and inferior version, and yet you're maybe getting a huge stat output for a relatively low mana cost. And I'd want to think that through, whether it was 6 or 8. I think 8 makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't want to go 10 because now there's only 3 monsters you're going to copy that make any sense. But 6 or 8 could really work. And so I like that idea. I think it makes a lot of sense within the realm of neutrality. It's similar but less. It's flexible, and that's its advantage. The damage is lower, but again, it fits in every splinter in every battle. But otherwise, I'm just going to wrap by saying they're looking for 7 unique abilities, each aligned with one of the core Splinterlands elements. And they want us to think about how these abilities can add strategic depth toward brawls, encouraging teamwork and leveraging the essence of each element. And they want to shape the future of Splinterlands. And I think that's an accurate and worthwhile pursuit for all of us, because Splinterlands is listening. They are, and I've never heard them reference, anything that I have particularly said, but I just know that there are certain voices that are hearing this conversation. And definitely with People's Guild, who interviews so many of the main people, Cryptomancer just recently, and some of the big voices like Azarcon and everybody under the sun over there. And so also there's rewards. So even if you don't care about it from the perspective of like, let's talk to try and make the game better, which I know you guys do, but maybe some people don't. Maybe they want that financial reward. Well, as a kickoff, we're exciting 3-part series running through November 10th. We're celebrating one of our biggest undertakings yet, with an array of rewards. Thank you all who have donated thus far. The competition will be fierce, but so will the prizes. We've gathered an epic stash, including a substantial pot of SPS and Chaos Legion packs to give away to contributors. The winners will be determined by cumulative votes across all parts of the challenge. So bring your best ideas and let's make the adventures. So I'm going to definitely clip this later and submit to them because I want to participate. I want to spark the ideas. I want to, even if my ideas aren't fully thought out because they're just literally off the top of my head now, there's room for growth on that, right? And the ones I didn't tackle, we didn't do Life, Dragon. So I'm going to circle back and I'll add to that. I'll add to this video later and drop it on the main channel.